Have you ever thought about what qualities as humans we would need to develop in order to catalyze collective evolutionary shift? Well, I've thought about that in context to a book that I've been reading by Roger Briggs called Emerging World. And in this book, Roger identifies 9 characteristics that set us humans apart from other species. And so when I came across those 9 characteristics, I organized them into a chart, and I started thinking about, well, what would happen if we developed each one of these characteristics to like its fullest extent? What would that become in terms of advanced abilities or superpowers, and how would that contribute to our evolutionary shift? So I'm going to share. I'm Christopher McClure, and this is Welcome to the Shift Show. And I'm going to share my screen now, and we'll get started with this. Yeah, sorry about that. There we go. All right, so yeah, this is called What Sets Us Apart and Where Are We Going? So here's a chart I made. This is the ancient Enneagram, and the titles in bold, these are the characteristics that Roger Briggs came up with, and the titles underneath, subtitles underneath, are the qualities, the advanced abilities, so to speak. So the first one, we'll start at 1 here, which is self-monitoring. So self-monitoring, as Roger describes it, is the ability to, it's like if you have a goal and you want to get to your goal, you want to advance to your goal, it's the ability to assess what you're doing and how well that is getting you to your goal. So if, say for instance, if you want to learn to play guitar, and you get a guitar and you start kind of tooling around on it every day for a month, and say you really haven't learned anything, maybe your fingers are a little stronger, then you might start thinking about what specific. Oh, I want to learn to play chords, or maybe I need to maybe I need to go onto YouTube and find some videos on chords, or maybe I need to get a teacher. So that's self-monitoring. Okay, so what I've found with this is the characteristic. Now, if we take that, as far as it can go, self-monitoring really, it's the process of, reaching a goal. It's the process of manifestation, and in the process of manifestation, what I found is that there is this progression of our will aligning with divine will, with the will of the universe, and that leads eventually to divine alignment. So I believe that self-monitoring would advance to divine alignment. The next trait is what he calls divided attention, which is the ability to split our focus. Some people might call that attention deficit disorder or multitasking. In any case, it's the ability to have multiple foci, and if you take this out and you go into multiple foci, then it seems to me that it moves towards what is called omniscience. And the Oxford Dictionary defines omniscience as the ability to be aware of all things simultaneously. So the next characteristic Briggs calls self-recognition, and some of you, maybe if you're animal owners, you might know that animals don't have the ability to recognize themselves in a mirror. They either see it as another one of their species, or sometimes not even that. Um, so we do have that unique ability to recognize ourselves. And um, taking this characteristic as far as it can go, what I see is that, so, maybe it's not only the ability to recognize our physical, or even our emotional, but to recognize our soul, you know. So self-recognition advances to soul recognition. The next characteristic he calls whole body imitation. And this is the ability to, like if you're in a dance class and, there's like a new song, a new dance, and you're just trying to follow along. And, at first you're just totally, you have to just be totally focused on the teacher and try to follow. And you're really not even that aware of yourself, you're just following along. But as you get kind of settled into that process, you start to become more aware of your own body and how that's matching up to the instructor's body, or maybe the bodies of other people in the class. And then you might, start noticing details about that, and then start noticing about how, the body parts, they integrate through a movement, how they're not isolated movements, but they're moving together. And you might even, start to get like the feeling tone of that dance sequence. So this is an ability that, if you take it as far as it can go, it's the ability to completely, like kind of conform to another. And this reminds me of like the superhero movies with shapeshifters, where they actually can become, take on the form of another entity. And there are actual accounts of shamans, real shamans in the world who have this ability. They have the power to shapeshift. So mind reading is the next one, and Roger defines mind reading as the ability to, well, first of all, to be objective enough to know that, that there's other people and they have their own minds. They have their own thoughts, they have their own feelings, they have their own perceptions. And so not only knowing that, there are other minds, but the ability to anticipate what that other, mind might be perceiving or thinking or feeling. Um, and you've probably been in a close relationship where you know, you think of the same thing at the same time as the other person, or they're about to say something and you already know what they're going to say. This is precursor to telepathy. So he calls this next characteristic, he calls symbolic invention. And symbolic invention is, the most common form of that is language. Basically the ability to to recognize what one has in one's consciousness, and to turn it into symbols that can be shared with another person, and then that person shares similar symbols back. So there's a communication that happens, and and generally in that kind of situation, the two people involved are more or less the same level of consciousness, but this can happen. This can happen between lower levels of consciousness and higher levels of consciousness, and so that and they talk about this in like advanced spiritual studies. They talk about how symbols, for instance, symbols can they can embody a whole level of consciousness, and that consciousness can be communicated to so sort of like an otherworldly consciousness can be communicated to a human being through a symbol. So symbolic invention advances to heaven and back again. So pedagogy is is teaching. Essentially, it's teaching. And when you think about teaching, there's a lot of the previous characteristics involved in teaching because first you have self-monitoring, so you have to learn something well enough for it to be valuable to teach, right? A method, um, to a framework, a system to be able to teach. But then you have to be able to assess where another person is at, which is kind of like the mind reading, and then you have to be able to turn the like I said, the consciousness into language that communicates it to another person. Um, and what this reminds me of is they say, like, for instance, when Cortez came to Mexico, that the primitives thought that they were like gods, and it was basically because they were they had advanced technology, advanced from in comparison to the primitives. So they had advanced technology, and they appeared like gods. And but there's also people that believe that extraterrestrials are actually our future selves coming back to teach us. So with pedagogy, I see this advancing to kind of like sort of blowing through time. And the ability for us to teach through time. So complex skills is another of the characteristics that Roger cites, and complex skills are basically these methods, these frameworks that we've already talked about that we develop through self-monitoring, and maybe we teach them in the form of pedagogy, but we have the ability to layer or to stack these skills on top of each other. And an example of this, for instance, is like sending man to the moon. Think about all the isolated activities that went into sending man to the moon. Very specific mathematical calculations, and the application to specific machines that were part of the whole sequence of events that happened to make that grand endeavor possible. And so taking this as far as it can go, complex skills leads to mastery of the universe. Okay, so the last one, Roger Briggs calls self-reminding, and self-reminding is similar to self-monitoring. It's the ability. So you have a goal, and then you have a complex set of skills that are leading to that goal. Self-reminding is the ability to know that, oh, I'm on this path for this kind of grand endeavor, and here I am right here, and I know that I need to focus on this specific path, but then there's going to be the next one. It's being able to remind us of where, even in the moment, that where we are is on a grander kind of trajectory. And this made me think of this somewhat advanced notion in Buddhist philosophy, which is called the wisdom of emptiness. And so here's an analogy, a few analogies for you. So the sky is like emptiness, and the clouds are like what fills that emptiness, right? So the sky is like the context, and the clouds are like the content. So similarly, you can think about painting, and the canvas is the emptiness. It's the context, and what we paint on the canvas is the content. It fills up the canvas. We can think about this in terms of awareness. That our awareness is the emptiness, or the context, and what the things that come into our awareness, those are the content. And they fill up the awareness, but the awareness is still awareness. The sky is still the sky. The sky is like being, and the clouds are kind of what the sky is doing. Um, and it's the similar kind of thing in our lives. Our lives are the context, and what's happening in our lives is the content. So on this journey from birth to death, um, if we can remind ourselves that what's happening in our lives is the content, but that the context, right, our lives itself, our awareness, is as important as the content. Well, that's the wisdom of emptiness. So I'm going to stop my share now, and so hopefully this is kind of got some some gears turning in your mind about who we are, and what we have, and how we can develop what we have so that we can evolve, and we can solve some solve the issues that we've actually created on Earth. So please comment. If you have any ideas, please comment, and yeah, let's kind of get like a group consciousness going about how we can evolve and what that really involves. Once again, I'm Christopher McClure, and this is Welcome to the Shift Show, and this episode is called "What Sets Us Apart and Where Are We Going?"